actually did a workshop for the first time, and it feels like forever because I could actually afford it because it was in South Africa,
Yeah.
right? I don't think I've ever been to a workshop like that before because generally what I'm used to is it would be more like a presentation. But for this one, we were like eight, nine, 10 people, and we could all see each other. And the host, who is a South African author, her name is Irene Flotman. She was like, "Oh yeah, so while we're talking, like, I would love your advice. I would love your feedback on how you feel about this and stuff like that." And I was just like, and so it was actually quite fun to kind of be a part of like a community in the sense that she would be talking about a topic and then she's like, "Okay, how do you guys experience it?" And then with all of us like had a little time to say something, and I was like, this was quite a fun workshop.
I love those kinds of interactive workshops are just the best. I've only been able to be to one like in-person interactive workshop. It was so much fun to just to sit there with the other authors and to write and then share and discuss. It's the best.
Yeah, so I was like, I will definitely do that again.
So today I'm drinking a strawberry kiwi juice. Nothing sounded good to me, so this is what I came up with.
Honestly, that's a good enough reason. It is so hot here. I went to the store this afternoon specifically to go buy those coffee sachets, okay? And then when I got to the aisle that they had the coffee, I saw like a Kit Kat mocha, and I was like, well, I cannot not have that. So we're drinking a little bit of Kit Kat mocha tonight. Oh my god, it smells so good. I'm like sweating here as I'm already thinking of drinking it, but it's gonna be worth it.
You had me at Kit Kat.
Alright, are we ready for this episode?
I am ready.
Alrighty, hey ho, and let's go! Hello, welcome to Tea and Tales. We are so happy to have you here with us. I'm Madeleine Einal.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. Today's episode, we are talking about writing difficult scenes, which is something that we got requested by from a viewer, actually. I am excited for this particular episode, especially because we have special guest Patrick Asensi coming on. He's a young adult writer. So let's welcome him to Tea and Tales.
Oh, Pato! Or as people who have read your novel like to know you as Patrick Asensi. Welcome so much to our podcast. I've been looking forward to this episode this entire year because I just love you so much, and I'm so glad that you're able to share your knowledge with us today.
Thank you very much. I don't have any knowledge, but okay, I share with you everything that I can. Thank you for your nice words.
Listen, you know more than I do because I don't write middle grade, so.
Okay.
Or young adult.
Okay, that's okay.
Maybe I should have you say the name of your title because my Spanish, like La finale del libro, I've got that fine, but that
Okay.
long word in the middle.
Nos despediremos al final del libro. It's a very long title for a novel, I know. I'm sorry.
That's okay. For someone who dabbles in Spanish, I understand my weaknesses in the language. But I am so excited because we're talking today with you about writing difficult scenes, and especially for the younger audience. Because difficult scenes are important to have. You want that emotional connection with the reader. You want to have all the different elements. But when you're writing for someone who's younger versus an adult, you do have to approach it differently.
Mhm.
So can you tell us a little bit about your book? And in English, it's "We will say goodbye at the end of the book," correct?
Okay, that's it.
Tell us a little bit about how you came into wanting to write that book and what it means to you.
Okay, this novel, it's a personal experience I had when I was 16 because a cousin of mine fell with a kind of illness. She was 16, like me, and she was my best friend. Book is about the process for the young Patrick, the Patrick who was 16 years old, processing that his cousin is very ill and maybe could die. So that's the book about.
Okay, that's rough.
Very intense.
But I love it in the sense that, I think all of us write to get that emotion inside of you out on the paper, because I think it's some form of therapy that you go to.
Mhm.
And I think that is why we found today's topic so important, because with middle grade and young adult, you have to be so careful to convey those emotions without scarring the reader who is reading
That's
it.
it. Yes. That's the most difficult part for of writing.
I know, right? And especially, I think it's such a difference when you are 16 and you're writing like a 16-year-old versus when you're 28, 30, 40 and you're trying to write like a 16-year-old, because your brain has developed and you're thinking more differently about things. When you're writing emotionally difficult scenes for your middle grade or young adult novel, how do you decide what needs to be on the page and what's better implied or left unseen?
That's a very difficult question. When I was writing this book, I have 11 nieces and nephews. So I told them my story with my words. Over the years, I was talking about the story that I was writing with them. So I can manage the words for describing scenes with some implying feelings and some specific and explicit in words. So I was talking with them, watching them, their faces when I was talking, and that's where I was find my the answers for that. When they were scared, I came back to the novel and rewrite the scene for doing it more softer for them, and the same in the other way when they were relaxed, or maybe they were not in the feeling I want to be in on a scene. I did the same thing. I came back to the novel, rewrite, and then talk to them again, read the a scene, and then I could compare the feelings of their faces and their words about the scene.
I love that you did that with the readers, and especially where they would be listening to the story and think this was a family member. Like, this is the story of a family member I never got to meet that he knows. And so to be able to get that feedback immediately, I never thought to do that with my young adult readers. And I have someone in my writer group who actually, we read a scene and he said, I don't know if this is too strong for my young adult readers, which is part of where this episode came from, is his question about how do I know if I'm being too strong? So I love that way of doing it, like pass it by the reader and judge how they're reacting. I'm sure they were different ages, like some
Yes.
younger, like 11, 12, 13, and some that were older, 16, 17, 18. Did you see a difference in the way that you would talk to them about traumatic moments between that middle grade and young adult age groups?
Yes, a lot of differences. That's why in my novel, the main character writes a fantasy novel, like a therapy, because when I talk with my oldest nephew, he asked me, it's very hard to read that. And my brother is 5 years younger than me, and maybe he cannot understand the things that you're talking about. And I was thinking, like, okay, we can do a thing. The main character will write a little fantasy tale for comparing the real life and the imagining life, for processing that pain that is the causing the illness of my cousin.
That's really interesting because I feel like we forget as an adult reader and somebody who you've processed through all of these emotions before, to think about how they view it and to how to soften it. It's interesting to me as a fantasy writer myself that you're using that character writing in fantasy to process
Mhm.
the emotions. And I tell people a lot that the reason I write in fantasy is because I can write about hard topics in a distanced enough way that people don't connect to it as directly as a historical
Mhm.
fiction or something like that. Do you find that you like writing in the real world and adding that fantasy element like you did, or would you want to go into some more fantasy writing in future books?
That's funny because actually the first thing I wrote was a fantasy tale. many years ago. And when I was thinking about writing my story, and then I talked to my nephew, he told me that maybe you have to write a thing, maybe to make it more understandable for younger people. And I was like, okay, I have it because I have written that. So maybe I can put the tale I wrote inside the book. And in my second novel that I'm writing actually right now, I'm making the same thing. There is a main character who is traveling around the world, and then he has not a trauma, but a problem that he have to solve. And the way to doing that is like he's traveling with his son, and then he's moving from Mallorca to Valencia, two cities, and then he's in the car. He noticed that for relaxing his son, he can read him a novel, and then he found a little tale, a fantasy tale for processing a little problem they had.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That is so cute. Oh, now I just feel like I have to learn Spanish just so I can read your novel. Or, Pato, you can translate it into English for me. I feel that should be what you should be doing.
Okay. My English is not very good, but maybe you can translate it for me.
It's a deal. I know all of us have specific tools that we use or specific ways we craft our writing when we want to evoke certain emotions and certain feelings and create certain scenes. So, are there specific craft tools that you use, like POV or pacing or sensory details, that you can rely on to avoid going too far into scenes that might be too traumatic for a reader?
I think it's my intuition, my instincts. Maybe it's the only thing I trust. I know that they are hard feelings that it's difficult to express in words in a novel. But I think that just because there are hard topics, they have to be written.
And would you say you use specific, because a lot of times when you write, people always say that you should use like your five senses, like your taste, your smell, your sight, your hearing, your touch. So do you use any of those five sensories specifically to evoke a scene? And what would they be?
To write that novel actually was the opposite. When I was writing the hardest scenes, I tried to be relaxed and happy, not sad. Because if I was very sad, I knew that my words were sadder than me. And I didn't want that. I want you to read it, but in calm, not in anger, not in sadness, because of me. On my own, when I was reading some kind of novels like sad stories or something like that, my heart was boom, 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 boom. And I don't want to make this in the readers. Just feel the novel, but no, not that deeply.
That's that's brilliant because I feel like when I'm writing emotionally, I use harsher language, and since I write
Mm.
for adults, I feel like it's fine.
Okay.
But I do get feedback sometime where people are like, it's really raw. It's really, really raw. And you have to take sensibilities into account sometimes, especially with our younger writers. So this episode came from a viewer who actually asked me in a call that I was on with him. And this is a different person that I talked about earlier, but he was asking, how do I write these scenes? Like, if I need to kill a character, how do I write that? How do I write this without myself getting into that emotional state? And I feel like you really covered that well with, you have to be in a calm state. I also gave him some other advice, like you have to make sure that what you are doing has a point and purpose for the plot, that you're not just doing it because you can. And we call that shock value. Like, you don't want to add things for just shock value and just for the twist, for the fun of it. So what does that actually look like on the page to you to make sure that it's authentic and necessary for the plot?
In that novel, I knew the whole story I want to tell, and I knew perfectly, because the main character is me, what the process was. So I transform the little points of important things in my life around that story into characters in the fantasy novel. So when I kill a character is because that feeling or that thing dead in me. So it's like I pass through that. In the fantasy tale, it dies.
Your second novel that you're currently busy writing, is that also
Mhm.
from personal experience, or is that something that has not happened to you and it was just an idea that came to you?
It hasn't anything about me, but I love watching people, talking to people, and know about the things that matters to the people around me. So I was inspired by some pieces of things that happens to a brother, friend, and I make the principal idea and then the process of the story. I'm not the main character that time.
I like that. The reason I ask is because when you read your first novel, that was from personal experience. Did you write
Mm.
it when you were 16 and then later on in life you re edited it, or did you write
That's
it later in life? So you wrote it when you were 16.
when I was 16, I wrote a personal diary. And the personal diary was letters to my cousin, my sleeping cousin. When I was older, I revisit these letters and make the fantasy tale. And years later, like 4 years ago, I think I was working one day, and I was like, I think I have to write a novel about all of this that I have inside me. And then it begins to take form.
Okay. So for someone like you whose first novel was based on your own experience, how would you approach your second novel where you might not have felt the feelings that you will be writing for your character, or you might not have experienced the trauma that you are giving your character or that your character is experienced? How would you approach that?
That made me afraid, very afraid of, because I was like, okay, do you want to take a risk, but you don't know how to feel the things that you don't feel? So what are you going to do? And I was like, okay, don't worry. You have to read a lot, talk a lot with the people you know that have these feelings, my brother. Then you have to write so slowly because you have to be secure about what are you writing, and that's what I'm doing. I'm taking it slowly because I want to make it sure, make it truth.
Do you find that you do, or do you expect to do more edits after you've handed what you've written over and say, hey, brother, did I do this right? Does this sound true to your experience? Or do you feel like because you've done so much work beforehand getting it correct, that there won't be as much need for editing?
I'm doing the same thing I did in the first novel. I read my words to my brother and then expect that the feelings are okay, I are well writing, and that's why I'm so careful and I'm so slowly writing.
Awesome. And so I asked that question because one of the important parts of writing an emotional scene is the aftermath, the fallout, the
Mhm.
change that it makes in the character, the change that it makes in the dynamics of the group, all of that stuff. And if you don't get the emotion right, the reader doesn't follow you in the aftermath correctly. So,
Correctly.
why is the emotional fallout more powerful than the traumatic experience itself?
When I wrote my first novel, I didn't think that I will be publishing it. So it was just writing for me. And then I published it. And a year later, a friend of mine came to Seville, where I'm living, and leave me a letter inside the box. I found that letter the next morning, and he was talking about all the changes, thank you to the novel he has made. So I never mean to be important. I never mean to change things. But if one person has changed because of reading the novel, that's okay. So maybe it's not the hard feelings. It's not that thing. It's just the aftermath. And then what? Are you okay? Have you changed for good? I'm so glad to hear about the letter.
Oh, that's such a sweet thing to hear because, like, you know that your story made an impact. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't need to be the most popular author in the world, but if I can reach one person, then I've done my job and helped one person. That is so awesome. So I'm going to switch tracks just a little bit into more of the craft of writing. What are some of the writing tools that you rely on?
I remember while I was writing that in the most difficult parts, I had to stop writing and then take a walk and cry and take and walk and cry and then came back home and okay, today you are not writing anymore. Maybe tomorrow. And that's the only tool I had, I think, because I never speak about this novel to anybody but my nephews and nieces until it was finished. I was writing very lonely and in peace. Lonely is not bad. It's like, okay, I'm with my words, I'm with my computer, so take it easy, relax, write. And if you couldn't write anymore, take a walk. Maybe you have to hear some relaxing music. I hear very much old classics for slow down my feelings and then start writing. Maybe sometimes I remember that I was like rereading a scene. I was like, no, it's not good. Erase it and start again. That's the only tool I had.
And do you find it easier to write those scenes like in first person POV or third person POV for the to add the emotion or to keep the proper distance for your younger readers?
In the first novel, it was like me who is living the book. In the second novel, I was like in third person. Like I'm only telling the story, I'm not involved in it. So it's okay. And that's, I think, that in my experience, the second way is more difficult because the first novel was like, okay, it's me, no problem. I know how I write, I know how I feel, it's okay. But in the second novel, it's more difficult because it's like, okay, you are writing in third person, but you don't know the feelings. You don't know exactly how to move somebody from here to here. Let's try. But it's for me, it's more difficult.
That is so interesting that you say that. Because I would have thought if you write a novel based on your own experience, that you would prefer to write it in third person to, like Sarah said, to distance yourself and not feel
Mhm.
those emotions that you're feeling. And myself, when I was writing a novel, it was in first person and it wasn't like a memoir, but it was based on a lot of experiences that I had that I turned it into a romance novel that I wrote. And then someone was reading it and they're like, this reads like very memoir. And I'm like, okay, first of all, that's a bit rude. But second of all, thank you. As soon as they pointed out my, I almost want to say mistakes in quotation marks, I came to realize that because I was writing it in first person and because of the scenes that I've written, the majority of it actually happened to me. It sounds weird, but my writing was sloppier because I didn't
Mhm.
want to go in depth with those emotions and those
Okay.
feelings. Yeah, so I found that so interesting.
I think that is for because you were thinking about publishing it because I wasn't thinking about it. So I was writing just for me, for my therapy, for my things, for my stuff, and that's it. So maybe I think it's easier because nobody's gonna read that and then they read it.
I mean, makes sense. Yeah. Okay, but then so because your novel is very special in the sense because it's not middle grade, but it's not young adult either. It's like a mixture in between. Because how old is
Yes, it
your
is.
main character? Is 16. So it literally like falls in the middle. You didn't intend to publish your novel. What ultimately made you decide to publish?
It's simple. A friend told me that maybe you have to publish it because there are many people like you around the world who is through that kind of problems like you. Maybe you can help them. And I was like, what, me? With that? Sure. And my friend told me, yes, sure. Years later, when I get the letter of my friend talking that it was very helpful for him, I was like, you were right. Thank you very much for pushing me to publish it. That's a friend.
I love when our friends jump in and tell us that we can do things that we did not think we could possibly do. And then they're right. Why are you right?
Absolutely.
We have talked so many times on the podcast about people who write memoir or some of these other genres that really get into reality tend to struggle with scenes like this. And you talked a little bit about your struggle, and you have to step away and take a walk. I have a thing of chocolate over here for myself
Of
when I
course. Okay.
write a difficult scene. I'm like, happy chocolate, happy chocolate. It's the way I have to cope. Go do dishes for a while. So when people are struggling, maybe they've already written the scene and they're trying to edit it. Maybe they're just trying to get through the scene in the first time. What is something that you could offer to them to let them know, maybe one thing that you would say that if this is happening, then you are doing well?
Yes, that's it. I made a little presentation of the novel, a little reunion to talk to my people, to my friends, to my family. I have published this book. You can read it if you want. I was thinking about it was in Madrid, and I was thinking it's gonna be like 15 people, 16, maybe 20, and I was like, I'm okay with that because it's not very big. The book is not that good. It's okay. It's my first novel, so I don't know if I'm in the correct path, but I did it, so I'm glad, I'm happy, and I have to share it with my family and friends. And the little reunion became a big reunion of 100 people who I didn't know. Friends with friends, family with friends, and I was like, oh my god. And what I have to do now. And some of the people who came did actually read it and came to me like, it was very helpful. Thank you very much. You have to write more. That's the first novel. You have to write another one, and then another one, and then another one. And I was like, I don't know if I'm in the correct path, but thank you very much for that love and support. So thank you. And I don't know actually if I'm in the right path, but I'm writing because I love it. And I think that maybe some people, if they're actually telling the truth, they are happy for reading my work. So it's like, okay, I'm good with that.
Thank you, Patrick, for joining us today. This is a heavy topic, and I love how you approached it with so much positivity, because we really want our authors to feel like they can do this and that their readers are going to enjoy it. And that's just the best feeling when somebody enjoys your writing. So thank you so much for joining us today and talking about your book.
Thank you because of inviting me here. Thank you very much. It was very lovely.
Absolutely, but now you actually have to write it in English so other people can read it.
Okay. Okay. I'll do. When I improve my English, then I write in English. I promise it.
And if you, as our listener, would love to hear more about Patrick or to get his book, if you speak Spanish, or encourage him to write it in English as well, we'll have all of the links to his books and places you can find him in the show notes. We like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you like what we are doing here, if you like the guests that we have on and the topics that we are discussing, go follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at 10 Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Details. Then go to that purple icon on your device, go to Spotify, and go comment and share and like, because that will help us to go up. It's a moment.
And join us next week, where we get to have a author spotlight with Amiko Jean. And also watch our social medias for that drawing that we're going to have for a blurb review with Jessie Cuniff. Happy writing.
Bye.